Throughout the years, I've always been sort of on the fence with Lil Tecca's music. I witnessed his rise to stardom ever since Ransom popped off. Most people disregarded Tecca as someone who was gonna be a one-hit wonder back then, and while he has never surpassed Ransom, one thing I have to respect about Tecca is his resilience in the music industry. How time and time again, Lil Tecca continues to prove his haters wrong by coming out with hits after hits year after year, keeping his name relevant in the game. And 2025 appeared to be no different, as his single from March, Dark Thoughts, is really popping off right now. And as someone who doesn't mess with mainstream music like that, Dark Thoughts is actually a pretty good song. The lead synths and melodies really stuck to my head after first listen, not to mention that the flow Tecca delivers on that track is catchy as hell. At the end of May, he will follow up Dark Thoughts with his second single, Owa Owa. Not as good of a song as Dark Thoughts, it just lacked that catchy hook and that infectious instrumental his predecessor had, but I still thought it was a fine single, and it had me somewhat excited for his new album. I say somewhat because, and I'm about to spit a hot take right here, I don't think Tecca's dropped a single project that's good front to back. This is because in my honest opinion, Lil Tecca is a singles artist, not an album artist. And you can definitely make a career out of being a single artist. I mean, when you are someone who can drop a popular song time and time again, he doesn't necessarily need to become an album artist to succeed. However, I am an album reviewer. I judge you based on how good your projects sound front to back. Now, when I saw the track list of this new album, Dopamine, something that immediately caught my eye is that the two singles are right at the front of the album back to back. Is it just me, or why do I feel like when an album does this, there's usually some tracks at the end that just gonna be ass? Anyways, Dopamine is an interesting album flow-wise because outside the first two tracks, damn near every song transitions to the next. It's an album where you just gotta let that bitch play all the way through to experience the full thing. The many beat switch-ups, the instrumental changes that the tail end of the song does in order to alley-oop the rhythm to the following song. Many songs even have an outro where there's like this radio host talking about you are listening to Dopamine FM or some shit. So this album is clearly being presented and marketed as not just an album, but a commercial-free, under the assumption that you actually pay a subscription to listen to music, radio experience of these chill, catchy, pleasurable music just to vibe out to your speakers. I've been seeing a lot of comparisons about how this album is very similar to The Weeknd's Dawn FM, as well as his very recent project, Hurry Up Tomorrow. Those two projects also saw The Weeknd dabble in tons of these smooth, crisp song transitions that admittedly fit the album well and contributed to the cinematic soundscape that, in my opinion, makes these two projects some of the best work he has ever put out. Here's my problem with that argument. I think that by comparing Dawn FM to Dopamine, you are essentially comparing a motorcycle to a bike. I'm pro song transitions, but only if they are used in a meaningful way. Not only do I think the songs have to contribute positively to the album as a whole, but those songs must have their own respectable highlights so they don't just mesh together in this very mild experience. Matter of fact, I even argue that the song transitions make this album worse. Allow me to introduce you Pierre Bourne's The Life of Pierre 5. This is the album y'all should be comparing Dopamine to. These two albums are identical in that each song sort of transitions into the next song consecutively. Both albums nevertheless have the same problem of basically chaining too many songs together that just aren't catchy and have lackluster performances from each respectable artist. And it's not just one or two songs that's mid. No, I'm talking about damn near 3/4 of the whole track list being a snooze fest. What happens is that because each song transitions to the next, it becomes even harder to remember what even happened on each song. To the point where by the time I finish listening to both projects, I look back at the track list and I'm like, damn, I don't know a single fucking thing that happened. It destroys the replayability of the album. I know you can come up to me and say that, oh, just because you don't go back to a lot of these songs doesn't mean that they have to be good. But isn't it nice to pick up something in each track, an element that appeals to you, or in this case, me, and be like, okay, I want to save it to a playlist, see if I can listen to it later. This is why I spent the majority of this review talking about the album as a whole and not each individual song, because on God, there's damn near nothing to talk about in each track. And I'm tired of people praising these song transitions like how cavemen discover how to use fire for the first time. By the time I'm at the halfway mark of the album, those transitions just don't bring any shock value to the table anymore. In economics, it's called the law of diminishing returns. I'm just tired of you spamming the same thing over and over again. I do have to give it to Tecca that his beat choices have gradually improved over the years. Sure, his improvement ain't linear per se, but most of the songs on here actually have good beats. They do try to sound like summer hits, but so many of these songs are just boring. Right away on the first track on the album that isn't a single, half the plot, Tecca's crooning just sounds so robotic. He's basically like a slightly more buff version of Nav. And once the song transitions to the next, The Truth, his robotic voice also transitions. And I'm just left with someone who has never experienced any sort of emotion in their life. Like deadass, you could have told me that Nav made Irish freestyle and Wake Up and I would have believed you. Favorite Light leads to a more groovy dance cut on the album, and I think it's slightly better than the previous songs, but still, I'm just missing that catchiness, that spark in Tecca's cadence. Things do switch up on Hollywood, but it's not a good one. The beat is a little too loud, it's low-key drowning what Tecca is saying. Normally, I dent an album a lot with production issues like this, but Tecca ain't saying shit on the song either. there. Boys Don't Cry as well as On One Night actually sees Tecca dipping his toes in this sort of rage/trap type beat, and I actually think he pulls off the former pretty well when I can remember how the song goes on top of my head. And believe it or not, this album in my opinion actually gets worse as we go to the end. At least in the front, the beats sounded passable enough to where he could just let it carry him, but the beats just fucking suck at the end. On Malibu's Most Wanted, Tecca spends the entire song pondering over which flow he wants to use, to the point where he's either taking it easy or trying to race the beat to the finish line. And at the end, we get one of Ken Carson's most sleep-inducing features. This guy sounds barely alive on Tic-Tac-Toe. Yeah, I think I'm resting my case. While I don't think Dopamine reaches Virgo World type of bad, I'm pretty underwhelmed by the lack of consistency and the sheer drop-off in quality the singles had compared to the album. Most notably, how lethargic the whole experience is. Call me a hater or whatever, but say ICE came up and threatened to deport you if you don't hum the melody of 3 songs on the album that aren't singles, I genuinely believe 50% of y'all would fail and be sent straight to Guantanamo Bay. I'ma just end this video by saying that I'm feeling a 3 to a 4 on this album.